Alright, so now we're going to talk about The Prom, which is based on a 2018 Broadway show that I really wasn't familiar with, really at all. The only thing I really knew about it was like loosely based on that real life incident in Mississippi, I think, when the lesbian couple was denied entrance to their own prom. And of course, it comes from Ryan Murphy, who I have liked in the past sometimes, but for the most part, I don't know that he's really my style, I guess. Sometimes he can be a bit too flashy, but I think that his style is probably much more suited to musicals than, say, something like, American Horror Story or some sort of hour-long drama or whatever. But I will say that the first thing that came to mind when I imagined a musical called The Prom, of course, was the Not Another Teen Movie musical number, and it's like, is it just that, only at, like, feature length? No, it isn't. Actually, what I wasn't expecting about it, because I really didn't know anything about it going in, was how much it's a satire on, like, celebrity. At least a good half of it. And it's not only that, but like they're like the kind of fake celebrity activism and awards and stuff like that, and just the overall narcissistic qualities of people that come from here. But it is in that way where it's like it's extremely self-deprecating in this pretty appealing way. Like I was immediately drawn in by the fact that the first kind of big number in it is based off of one review they get for this shitty show that they put on about Eleanor Roosevelt, and the whole idea how it's basically they're making everything like every single like tiny positive thing about themselves is blown up into this enormous thing, and then they're just immediately hit back down. I also think this is interestingly timed, which I'm assuming is totally coincidental, when all the COVID stuff started going on, and there was like, it felt like every other week or so, there was some sort of major backlash of a celebrity trying to do something really profound that just was really tone deaf and didn't work. And that's pretty much describes the main characters in this movie, apart from the main girl. But we do have stuff that's here that is some recycled material that's still kind of funny. Like there is Andrew Reynolds' character being the type where he's trying to do all this great stuff, but he's just known for some shitty sitcom that he did. And there's one joke that's weirdly specific that felt lifted from another movie. It's the moment when we see a brief clip of this sitcom, and Hold My Hand is playing with it to make it look really, really cheesy. And that joke with that song is a joke that's in the David Duchovny movie, The TV Set. It's like it's weird that a joke that specific could be repeated, which I'm assuming is a complete coincidence, a very weird coincidence, but it's there. But it's still quite funny here, especially in the context of how that keeps coming back and how at some point it's even advantageous to them, and unexpected to them anyway. Um, but going on to the other side of this, after we get to know their really over-the-top characters played by not just Andrew Reynolds, but also Streep, Kidman, and Corden, and who are... I think I heard something about people being upset that it wasn't like the original cast, which I can totally get. Because it is gonna be the case of, yeah, of course they're gonna slap, A-list names onto it. But I mean, this is a pretty... just despite how many people may or may not feel about James Corden, it's a pretty insane cast, with those three on top of Keegan-Michael Key, and then others like Kerry Washington and Tracy Ullman and Mary Kay Place and all these other people. And some people that do, come from the stage. Obviously, Andrew Reynolds comes from the stage with, I believe he's in Book of Mormon, or was in Book of Mormon. But yeah, on the side of this, after we get the really sort of heightened look at them and their celebrity and their massive narcissism, we do have the other side of this. Our main character, who is Jo Ellen Pellman, I think, and this is like her first movie, like her first like big part anyway. And she is like this sort of, even though she's also, they're all in this very over-the-top musical, there's something about her that's like this sort of even contrast to how big their characters are, and there's something, like I said, even in this very stylized story, there's something sort of real coming from her, at least emotionally, including the fact that the girl that she asked to prom that started this whole controversy is none other than the daughter of Kerry Washington, and Kerry Washington is like the head PTA member that's trying to stop the whole thing. And Ariana DeBose plays her, and they have. I mean, of course, it's a musical, so this almost goes without saying, but it's really noticeable how the chemistry between the two of them is much more potent as far as like in the songs and in the musical numbers rather than the scenes themselves. Because the scenes where they're just kind of talking without a song being there is kind of just there. Like there's really not much there. But then once they start singing, then it really kind of comes through. And they together have probably the most touching songs in it. Especially since most of the other songs tend to be comedic in nature, or at least as over the top as possible. And then once these two things collide, it's I didn't like love this movie or anything, but I can certainly get the appeal of it and where a lot of this goes, especially with the jokes like when they're trying to get a hotel, and a 3-star hotel at that, and Streep tries to buy her way into the hotel with her Tonys. It's just something real. And then there's the whole thing where Corden comes in with his Drama Desk Award, which, if I remember correctly, it was like kind of a like people were fans of the show were upset that the Tonys like shut it out, but it did get a Drama Desk Award. I don't, so I'm assuming that's also a self-deprecating joke at the show itself. There are some things that feel kind of weird and misplaced, especially for a movie that is over 2 hours. It's like 2 hours and 12 minutes or something, which kind of made my heart sink when I saw that runtime. Just because it was mainly my main concerns going into this were Ryan Murphy, and because I'm so indifferent or not really on his like same, we're not on really the same page as far as his vision, I guess. But there are some things that did stand out as I don't know. I have no idea what's going on anymore. Like the fact that there's the moment when she's hanging out with kind of all of them, and then she has scenes with just Corden, or maybe scenes with just Streep. Then there's a scene where she has with just Kidman, and she's talking about how like she and Kidman are great friends, and how it's great they've spent all this time together. But I don't really remember Kidman being there before this, and honestly, I don't remember Kidman being there for. I mean, she's always there, but compared to like Streep and Corden, she's practically in the background, which is a shame because she can like eat this kind of role alive in the best possible way, and it is like when she does get her sort of like Fosse like number, when it's like when she's the whole thing going on with her, how she's like desperate to play Roxy Hart, and it's like all I wanted to do was stop watching The Prom and start watching an adaptation of Chicago with Kidman. But the best we can get is this sort of knockoff number, if you will. That it almost feels like Rob Marshall ghost directed or something. But there are also other character interactions throughout. The interesting idea to have Keegan-Michael Key be the love interest of Meryl Streep, I can't say is anything that I ever expected to see. Say not that they don't have some sort of chemistry, though I'm trying to remember the last person Streep didn't have chemistry with. And of course Keegan-Michael Key is a natural-born performer in any instance, so that was interesting, but as far as like the rest of the numbers, it is something that feels kind of, I can get if somebody's like really attached to the songs or whatever, because there will be people that know like all the songs front to back, and that in itself will say something for them. But as somebody going into it more or less blind, it did start to feel a bit repetitive, and I'm not quite sure if it's, I'm going to assume it's the way it's shot wasn't doing the choreography any favors, because obviously there's such a precision in choreography in general, and really any number, but the way, like, it sort of felt like the same camera movements and the same shots kind of over and over again, and that seemed to really be doing a disservice to the choreography itself and made it seem more redundant and repetitive than it actually was. Um, but the thing here also is that we have stuff like the number set in the mall, where it's like kind of at the start it feels like really really big, and maybe this is the point, because obviously they're going to a much smaller place than they're used to, but all the numbers feel so weirdly confined for something that feels this big. When we get to that, it's like, and the number at the mall also like just kind of kept going and going. There were like 3 different times where I thought the mall number was ending, and it just kind of kept going, and the lyrics kind of just were on a loop after a while. It was like somebody malfunctioning. But that's not to say there aren't a number of clever lyrics throughout it through the various songs. But it started to feel very very long. Like it really really felt that 2 hours and 12 minutes. And it's like, but it does get to the point where we have some actual great numbers, like not just like, the lyrics or the choreography or whatever, but also the like what's going on in them, like the idea of having Corden have a musical number with his younger self, who otherwise had, an embarrassing prom before, now gets to be like this big figure amongst this one. So there's something rather profound in numbers like that. Um, and then there's a particular moment where there's that moment usually in movies like this where a viral video happens, and it's like these movies basically make it look like anybody can basically go on whatever, like a YouTube or whatever this knockoff is, the in movie knockoff of that is. And just one song gets you like 8 million views overnight, and it's sort of that, I hate to bring this up, but like a gem on the holograms kind of syndrome. It's that kind of bullshit. But this song is actually like it's a really touching number, and it's, even despite the fact that it feels like the movie is in its third year by that point. But what's interesting is, even though the movie does feel very very long and more often than not like a slog, it does get more, the numbers get more touching as we get into like the final third of it, and it feels like there's much more meaning behind it. And even the scenes that don't have musical numbers, like the whole side thing going on with Corden and his mom, who Tracy Ullman is playing, and there's something there that almost feels like, by all accounts, especially in a movie so over the top, it would have come off really melodramatic, but it weirdly kind of works. So, which honestly was a bit unexpected, at least to me. So, and then as the characters like come more and more down to earth, and it seems like to take that away from them would make the characters lesser, because when they really work is when they're at their most narcissistic, because that's when they're at their most funny and over the top. But it does actually have a genuine like emotional appeal when they start to come down a little bit, and they, because the narcissism never quite leaves, I think, is what helps. Like, they never seem to have a full on like cathartic moment of, who am I and why am I like this. It's like, the narcissism's always going to be there, and I'm glad that they didn't really shy away from that. And it would have made the characters worse, if that had happened, if they had backed down and tried to make them as likable as possible. The fact that they still have that smidge of unlikability is what actually adds to their appeal and makes them funnier characters. So, yeah, I'm okay with this, I guess. It was kind of I was a little more irate while I was watching it, and it kind of felt like it was going on and on and on forever, especially with the storyline of how it's like, first, the prom isn't going to happen, then the prom is going to happen, then it's 2 separate proms just to humiliate her, then there's an actual prom. It feels very like we're just going in circles, and it's not helped by the songs sometimes feeling repetitive and overlong. So yeah, but once again, that is from the perspective of somebody that is just not familiar with the show at all. So if I was, I would probably have a different opinion, but this is what it is. So I guess I'm going to leave this at this, and we're going to finish out this whole sort of catching up on the last month thing And then we'll get into the stuff that's newer in the next like day or so. So until all that stuff, that's it.